Additional aids and services are available to individuals with disabilities. To make such a request, please contact us by email, by clicking the Help tab in the PD portal, or at pdportal@tamu.edu, by phone, including Relay Texas at 1-800-441-7323, or in writing to Train PD, PD Portal Support, 4477 TAMU, College Station, Texas 77843. Both a transcript and accessible document of the content presented in this webinar can be found as resources in the course description. Click on the blue links under Course Resources in the description. When a link is clicked, a new browser window will open.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to Teacher Tuesday. So I would like to introduce Anne-Marie Molinari-Sanders. She is our TCAL, Manager of Disability Services and PD Specialist, and she is 100% an expert on this topic. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie, for presenting for us today.
So a little bit about me. All I really want to say on this slide is that I have 24 years in adult education and literacy this year. I can't believe it. I started my career as a teacher, a GED and an adult basic education teacher, and also spent time as a special education teacher in K through 12. And so I bring this to you today with a teacher's heart. I'm really excited. One thing I want you to keep in mind is that I'm a passionate supporter of accessible open educational resources. And by that, I mean resources that are available to people with disabilities. So a good example of something that would not be accessible is a scanned textbook that's just a scanned image. So if you have a 300-page book, and all it is the scanned textbook, that is not accessible. As you start researching these materials, really take a look and see just how accessible they are. And then lastly, I do need to say PS, I am not a lawyer and I can't give legal advice because we are going to be just touching the surface of copyright. Very specific law, legal type questions I cannot answer. We're going to do a warm up now. All right, here we go. When you hear copyright, how do you feel or react? Okay. Do you have strong emotions? Don't know even what the word means? Or do you not care one way or another? Careful. Cautious. Picture on the right. Picture 2 on the right. Yes. Like my cat, right? Ugh. Copyright. Oh my goodness. Yes. Research, awareness. We have the rights to copy, but with permissions. All right, very good. So here we go, everybody. Let's look at our learning objectives before we dig into the other areas. And one thing, if I forget, you'll notice that all of the pictures in my PowerPoint today are an open educational resource. By the time you leave here today, you're going to know what that CC BY NC ND 2.0 is underneath this picture right here. So our learning objectives are, we're going to recognize the definition of open educational resources. What are they? How can we use them? We're going to understand the difference between copyright, public domain, and OER. And understand the 6 Creative Commons OER license. That's what CC means. We're going to jump in to copyright, public domain, and OER. And there is a difference. Okay. I did not know this, and some of you may know this. Did you know that we had a United States Copyright Office? For our purposes today, we are going to work with the official U.S. copyright definition. The U.S. Copyright Office is part of the United States federal government. Copyright is a type of intellectual property that protects an original works of authorship. So simply that means as soon as an author fixes the work in a tangible form of expression, it's intellectual intellectual property. I'm going to give you some examples. If you are a poet and you write a poem, as soon as you put that poem on a piece of paper in a tangible form, or you type it on the computer, or you seal it in an envelope and you give it to a friend, that is subject to copyright. It is an intellectual property. Another example is a music composer. As soon as they compose music and there's a musical composition, that can be considered a copyrighted work. And then if I'm an artist, as soon as I put my brush to the canvas, or that painter puts a brush to the canvas, that's in a tangible form and there's a beautiful piece of artwork. In copyright law, there are many different types of works that can be covered. And I'm not going to read them all, but you can see them here. Paintings, illustrations, musical compositions, sound recordings, computer programs, poems, blog posts, movies, architectural works, and much more. So in essence, we are all copyright owners if we create something. How long do you think a copyright lasts? Once someone assigns a copyright or a copyright is assigned, how long does a copyright last? As of January 1 of 1978, a copyright lasts until the death of the author and then 70 years after that. If there is more than one creator or author, the copyright is in effect until that last author's death and then 70 years after that. And then it goes into the public domain and you can use it. Now, I want to see if I can jog your memory about recently a copyright was lifted and is now in the public domain. Has something to do with Disney. All right, so Mickey Mouse, but not the modern day Mickey Mouse. Which one? Because that's where it gets sticky. The old guy, Steamboat Willie. Steamboat Willie was his name. But you have to be careful with copyright because other versions of Mickey Mouse are still protected. That is copyright definition. So let's move into OER. The OERs, and I want to put emphasis on the educational part, open educational resources. This definition is provided by the 2010 version of the National Education Technology Plan. If an object is an OER, it supports or facilitates teaching, learning, and research. That's what open educational resources were designed to do. And this is where we go away from the restrictive copyright because it lives in the public domain or it has been released under an intellectual property license. The one we're going to talk about today is the Creative Commons license. Now, what's cool about this is when you have an open educational resource, it allows for collaborating and sharing and repurposing the materials in ways that educators can be supported and we can use them. So really today, our focus is on education and how open educational resources can help us. And OER has taken off in the educational realm and the public sector for government and research. So this is our working definition of OER. If we know that an open educational resource is an object or a material that supports teaching, learning, and research. So sometimes podcasts can be open educational resources, lesson plans, digital textbooks, which I think is what those OpenStack are. Digital textbooks are becoming very popular as an open educational resource. And we're going to see more and more of that. Here's some other ones. Digital courses and curriculum. At the end of today, I am going to share a digital resources list for you. Some great places to start looking for OERs. You'll see a lot of examples of digital courses and curriculum. So I've given you my top 3 favorites in this resource list. And then digital libraries, apps, games, simulations, and images. So we've talked about copyright, but now I want to talk about public domain versus an open license. When a copyright expires after the life of the author, and then 70 years after that, a work automatically goes into the public domain. What that means is there is a complete release of any claims of ownership. It is no longer under copyright protection. And when something goes into the public domain, we can use it freely and do with it what we want without the permission of the former copyright owner. This is also a citation from the US Copyright Office. So that's public domain. That's the relationship to copyright. But then we move into this next thing. Open educational resources that we just talked about can be provided and shared under a type of open license. In this open license, the copyright ownership is still retained, but we're opening it up and we're allowing certain things to happen. So the author grants broad rights to the public to reproduce, to change, to distribute, to collaborate, and we'll get into that next. So I want to kind of give you what an open license is. We've talked about several different things. So here is your assignment. Okay, so which one has permissions up front? The copyright or the open license? Permissions up front for the open license. All right, the permissions, open license, we can reproduce, whereas copyright we cannot use without permission. That's right. Good, and there's different levels. Excellent. Copyright has an owner, and if I use it, I must cite it and give it the credit to the owner. Open license, I can use it without repercussions. So basically, everyone is sort of right. So both grant free access, not necessarily. Copyright can really get you in trouble sometimes, copyright infringement, depending on what the copyright covers. That's why you really got to be careful. But when we move into an open educational resource, it does provide those permissions. One of the things about OERs is you do have to give credit to the creator. The next thing we want to do is understand what is involved with an OER license. What we're looking for are the 5 R's of OER, which means the more R's that are present, the more open the material becomes. You always have to give credit to the creator, but they are going to allow you to use it. Whereas with copyright, they may say, absolutely not. You can view this, but you can't use it. You can't change it, and you can't use it unless you pay me. That's where it's different. So here are the 5 R's: retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute. Let's break this down. The first R simply means you have the right to make, own, and control copies of the content. So as a creator, you retain the rights, and then you decide how you want to share the material. And then you reuse. And reuse means the right to use the content in a wide range of ways, in a class, in a study group, on a website, in a video. And as we're searching out OERs, we're starting to want to look for that reuse in the license, the ability to reuse the material. So then we have revise. Now, this is where you really get into the heart of what OER is designed to do. You have the right to adapt, adjust, modify, or alter the content. An example of that would be to translate the content into another language, change the colors of a sunset in a photo, maybe add another photo, even edit the photo possibly if you needed it, to add it to something that you're already doing. And then the next one is very cool. And as educators, this is very important to us, isn't it? Remix. The right to combine the original or revised content with other material to create something new. This is what we call a mashup. So thinking about some of you that are teachers, how many times do you start a lesson plan and then you go and you take great ideas from other lesson plans? Or you use Book Creator to create a book and then you share that book out. So remixing is a huge part of a Creative Commons license, because where we're going next is we're going to look at the Creative Commons licenses that make up OERs. Then the last one is redistribute. And that's the right to share copies of the original content, your revisions, your remixes with others, and you give a copy of a friend. So you've taken the original lesson plan, you have done all of these things, you've reused it, you've revised it, you've mixed it, and now you're going to redistribute it. By the time we get to this last R, this redistribute, is there a possibility that the original material or object doesn't even look like it did when it started? Yes or no? Has it grown, changed? That's the beauty of an open educational resource. You redistribute something new so that it's organic and it continues to grow. And you're going to be able to create your own license. We're going to look at the actual licenses. So those are the 5 R's of OERs, open educational resources. And let's keep these in mind. But always remember, you have to give credit to the creator. That does not change, but it's what you can do with it afterwards is what changes or doesn't change. All right, question stop. Do we have any questions about the 5 R's? Any questions about the difference between a strict copyright and public domain at all? I have a question. Would Earthfire use screenshots out of a YouTube video and then cite and use the video in class? My response to that is that you need to look what the copyright restrictions are on YouTube. They're going to tell you. Some of them are not. Some of them will say yes, some of them won't. An example of one that can be a little bit challenging and could lead to some copyright infringement is like a Disney, even though you're just using screenshots, if it's like something from Disney, they still may not like that. So if you want to follow along with me, scan this QR code. This is going to be the actual license that you can give credit if you create something, or if you're looking at a resource. This will help you know how you use it. This is our first license. You can see here that this is Creative Commons BY. And the BY is very important. Every Creative Commons license will always start with BY. So this is kind of going back to copyright in a sense, because you still have to give credit to the creator, but you can do all the rest of the 5 R's. You can distribute, remix, adapt, and build upon the material in any medium or format. This is still considered very open. So let's look at the second one, Creative Commons BY SA. That means share alike. What this means is that you can remix, adapt, and build on the material in any medium or format, as long as attribution is given to the creator. That's what the BY is. Here's the important part. You must license it the same way. So adaptations must be shared under the same terms. And the way I wrap my mind around that is I have to continue to let this grow and be organic. I can't lock it down. I want this to be able to be shared and continue to grow. And I want you to think of this as kind of a bandwidth, because the farther we go in here, the narrower the license is going to start to become. So the next one, Creative Commons BY non-commercial. So what this says is, okay, you can do anything you want with this material. You have to give me credit, but you cannot use this for commercial uses. And this is a very good one for education, because especially in education, when something is created with federal funds, it is to be used in education and not for commercial purposes. And think of links. All of the resources on links is a good example. And you'll notice that a lot of the materials on links have a Creative Commons license. Now let's go down to this one. This one is Create CC BY non-commercial share alike. So now I'm tightening it down a little bit more. I'm saying, okay, you can do whatever you want with it. You can do all 5 Rs. You have to give me credit, but you also have to license it the same way with that share alike. So these last two are the most restrictive and resemble more of a copyright. You have to think about it this way, if it has to do with policy or something having to do with research. So this one is Creative Commons BY non-derivative, which means you can distribute it, but credit has to be given to the creator, and there can be no changes or adaptations. So no derivatives, which means no changing of ideas or adaptations of the work permitted. And when you research materials, the Creative Commons license usually is at the bottom of the page on a website or a material, or on the terms of use page on a website. Sometimes you have to go look for it. And the last one is considered the most restrictive. This is giving credit to the creator only for non-commercial uses, and no non-derivatives, meaning no adaptations of the work. Those are your 5 licenses. But let's pause here for a minute and see if there's questions. Can we use copyright material for educational purpose? That depends on the restrictions of the copyright. You have to look at the materials. Depending on how the materials were originally created will determine. But one thing we didn't talk about is that a creator can create something, but there may be another overarching copyright on top of it from an organization. The best thing to do is to ask. And they may give you a letter that says permission to use. Many times it will say permission to use for educational purposes. I want to give you a snapshot. These are the licenses. So you can see the snapshot, and this again shows you. So at the very top, the most open is public domain. But what we just talked about were these 6 licenses: BY share alike, BY non-commercial, BY non-commercial share alike, BY non-derivative, and BY non-commercial and non-derivative. So I just wanted to show you that, and let me move forward again. Okay, so do we type that in the alt text under an image, for example, and for other materials, where do we give credit? And you're talking about alt text for accessibility, which is one thing, but where you want to put the attribution is right underneath the picture. And when you look at my PowerPoint, you can see where I put the attribution right underneath the picture. So that lets everyone know where that picture came from. You don't want to put it in the alt text. You want to put it right on the PowerPoint or the material. Now, your second question, and for other materials, where do you give credit? I'm going to show you an example of what I did, but I would put it on the top or on the bottom is fine. So if you're reusing something, let me go back to this one for a minute. Creative Commons, the share alike. So if you adapt something Your credit should give credit to the original person, then say it was from you, and then follow it that way and cite it that way. Any questions, or can I move on?
It seems we can use all 5 for advertising classes to increase enrollment, as long as we follow the rules.
If you create something and you want to use a license to like create a flyer, you could create it and then share it. But if you're saying that you took a flyer from something else, I'm not so sure. And I'm going to move on and then we'll keep going. Which are the 2 most restrictive ones on this page? Anything with NC or non-D, right? Non-commercial, non-derivative. One of the things that I want to share with you, and this is kind of summing it up, I want you to think about what can become an open educational resource. And we've talked a lot about this already, but anything that you create. So thinking about your Microsoft documents, your PowerPoints, your Google Slides, your docs, videos, images, or photographs that you create, you can apply a Creative Commons license if you choose, keeping in mind that there may be restrictions based on where you work or if there's other copyright restrictions in place. So when in doubt, speak to your supervisor or your director to make sure so that you can share these things. And then you can use a free attribution builder. And this is what I want to share with you right now. And this is a very cool website. This is called the Open Attribution Builder from Open Washington. And I want to share this. So this may also help you when you create your own. So I'm going to do a new share. And this is your attribution builder. And you can see here that you follow the screens. This is completely free. And when you fill out the screens, OER, digital resources, then you put the author, which is your name. Then you can add your organization, the project, and then over here, you decide what OER license you want. And at the resource sheet I'm about to share with you, I use this Open Attribution Builder, and you can see what it looks like. Okay, I'm going to show you what it looks like on the sheet. And I shared this OER digital resources sheet with you under the Creative Commons BY non-commercial. All I ask is it's not used for commercial purposes. You've got this in your resource list. So when you create your OER license, you use this and then you cut and paste it and put it right into your document. All right, finding the license and using others' work. These are my favorites. OER Commons, Merlot, and Skill Blocks. And Skill Blocks is a wonderful, amazing resource from World Education that already has a repository of open educational resources. So I would start with these 3. And everything Skill Blocks is all about educational resources. And so you can go in and look, and all of the 5 R's are there. You can revise, you can remix, and you can redistribute on most of the materials that they share. And share among yourselves. And also find the terms of use page on a website and always read the license, because sometimes an OER license hides on the terms of use page on a website. When in doubt, ask and do your research. Here is what I want to share with you now. And that attribution builder that I showed you, this is how I created it right here. And I cut and pasted it and I put it into the document. And it says OER Digital Resources List by Anne-Marie Molinari Sanders, trained PD at TCAL, and it is licensed under BY non-commercial share alike. And that 4.0 means it's just the most recent addition. Any final questions? And it's linkable to the copyright. You mean how I created it? I'm not sure what you mean by that. When you mean it's linkable to the copyright. Or you mean to the document? Okay, well, the document's going to become yours. So it is now yours as a Word document that you can share wherever you want. But it's not linked to where you store it. But it can be if you want it to be. Okay, so Microsoft has an option to search for Creative Commons images. Those are the ones you know that are under Creative Commons. I want to show you something. This picture right here, I found on Creative Commons, and look what it says, Bureau of Reclamation, right here, Bureau of Reclamation is licensed under Creative Commons, BY Share Alike 2.0. And so I wanted to share that with you. And that's where you will put your attribution on a picture.
Thank you so much, Anne Marie. This was fantastic.
We hope you enjoyed this pre-recorded webinar. After you have passed the final test with a score of 80% or greater and have received your certificate of completion, please take a few moments to complete the course evaluation. Participant feedback helps Train PD at TCAL continue to provide high-quality professional development. To leave a course feedback, please go to the completed portion of your transcript. To do this, hover over the My Learning tab and select View Your Transcript. Click on the drop-down arrow next to the word Active and select Completed. Then, click Evaluate in the drop-down menu next to the course you just completed. Please note that your feedback is greatly appreciated.